Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir. Say go. I'd like to begin this town hall meeting with a moment of personal reflection. Council Gardner, will you please lead us in the singing of our national anthem?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee peoples, the Mohawks of Akwesasne, the original keepers of this land. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Justin Towndale.
Present.
Councillors Claude McIntosh.
Present.
Dean Hollingsworth.
Present.
Sarah Good.
Present.
Caroline Hébert.
Présente.
Councillors Elaine McDonald.
Present.
Sydney Garner.
Ici.
Denis Sabourin.
Present.
Todd Bennett.
Present.
Fred Ngudjo.
Présent.
Councillor Dupel sends his regrets, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda? Seeing none. Okay, any motion to adopt the agenda as presented, please? Councillor Ngudjo, Councillor Bennett, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Any disclosures of interest for this evening? Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will step away from the conversation when we get to item 9, the conversation about the former Bob Turner site, as the Social Development Council is leading a project that has proposed alternative use on that space, so it would be unfair for me to be part of that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any other further conflicts of interest? Okay, seeing none, before I move on, our town hall policy requires me to go over some of the basic rules. I won't read them all out because we'd be here a little longer. But basically, speakers are limited to 3 minutes at my discretion. While staff are here, they are not able to participate. It is up to council and the chair to address questions. However, to be honest with you, you may not get the answer you're looking for tonight, in which case we'll take that back and get you an answer at a later date to make sure. So just be aware that we may not have the answers here as council. I just want to preface that. I know that some individuals here tonight didn't register in advance. I will recognize you. However, we're going to go through our established speakers list first, and then afterwards I'll ask if there's anyone who wants to speak. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Our first item on the agenda is Lafave Park by Aaron Fry. Aaron, if you'd like to come to the presenters table, the mic is already on for you.
Hi. So my name is Erin Fry. I'm a commercial realtor, and my first item that I wanted to put on the agenda is just, I think I actually had brought it up to Justin a while ago, but Lafave Park. It's near St. Lawrence High School, and it's literally just a lot, and there's some beautiful trees, there's squirrels, that kind of thing, but absolutely nothing there. No garbages, no benches. There's signs up saying no dogs, so you can't even walk through with your dog. So it's just like literally wasted space, and to call it a park, I feel like there's a lot of kids, a lot of people with dogs, a lot of, you know, that kind of thing. And literally you can't even go to have like a lunch or something there because there's no benches or anything. So that's it. That's that. Just thought I'd bring that up in case no one knew, you know, I live in the area, so I go by it all the time and feel bad when I can't take the shortcut with my dog, just in case I get caught by bylaw. So,
Thank you.
that's it.
Are there any comments from council? Okay. Councillor Bennett and Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I live about 3 blocks from there.
Yeah,
And growing up, I lived about 3 blocks the other direction.
Okay.
And it was just always been there.
yeah.
As a passive park. And I never really thought of it.
Really?
So when I said, yeah, it's just one of those things that's been there since you're 12 and you don't think
Yeah.
anything of it. But there are parks
Yeah.
reasonably close.
Yeah.
Did you have any ideas of what you wanted to see there, or just
Well, I
benches,
mean,
park?
Like I said, well, the first thing I would say is there is a sign that says no dogs. Like, not pick up after your dog, which is one thing, but it literally has a sign that says no dogs. And that's strange because you could, you know, go through that path with your dog during a walk and it's nice, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, there's no garbages, so even if you did do something like if, let's say, we implemented that, you can't do anything about that. There's no benches, you know, it's literally just wasted, it's a beautiful space, there's
It
lots
is,
of
yeah.
trees and, you know, but yeah, I had moved from Ottawa, I moved right near there, and I was like, what a wasted space, you know, and like, or a splash pad or something small, you know,
Yeah.
like there's no splash pads in that area, you know, something like that, but, you know, I'm sure there's something, you know, even the garbage that is put there by the city would be nice, you know.
Yeah. No, it's, it was nice to see that, just because, like I said, I've lived there pretty
Yeah.
much most of my adult life and
Never
never
occurred to
gave
you,
it a
yeah.
thought, just because there's other parks nearby, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's something that I think we could probably look at, even just if we put picnic tables there or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, you can't even, like, if I want to take a coffee and go do some of my work on my laptop, I can't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I sit on the grass, you know. I haven't done that, but, you know, I
But you
mean,
could,
you
yeah.
could.
Right, thanks.
So, yeah, no problem.
Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, just an overall comment about how tonight is going to go. I think a lot of what's coming here, we don't have the answers for, right? So
And that's why I just
I-
thought, put it on there.
No, I appreciate that. So it's unfortunate that administration can't speak to some of this because I feel like they would have better
Yeah.
answers than us. So, however, I think it'd probably be really simple to get a picnic table over there before the end of the week. Just looking over at our manager of said department. So I thank you for bringing it forward. I'm just voicing my concern about having no opportunity to hear from administration tonight and for the rest of the evening. And like, can we ask administration questions?
Our town hall policy stipulates that staff are
Including-
encouraged to participate but cannot, encouraged to attend, but they cannot participate.
Okay, I clearly didn't read that well enough. Sorry. So maybe we can hear from administration in a follow-up report? Is that a better way of going about this?
You're not able to advance business
Nope,
at this
okay.
meeting. However, you can bring something forward to committee of the whole, i.e. a council meeting.
Okay, great.
Well, that's what I figured, just put it out there and maybe someone will pick it up.
Councillor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Given that you live in the area, obviously you're around, I'm assuming you might talk to your neighbors while you're walking your dog.
Yeah.
Have you heard from other neighbors about kind of what they would like to see for that park, given that it
I
is
have-
just a blank space right now?
Yes, I have heard people saying like things like, you know, it'd be great if it was a dog park, but yeah, it's right in between homes and things like that, so I can understand that it wouldn't be a great spot for a dog park. I mean, it would have to be closed in, but there's homes and stuff like that, so it could get loud, that kind of thing. I understand that, but I've heard it from many people while I'm walking my dog, like, oh, I walk through anyway with my dog, but I always feel nervous. And I'm thinking, really? Like, to just walk through, you know, like, there's literally a sign that says no dogs allowed, so it's a bylaw that was put in place. And, you know, so that's where it keeps coming up, you know.
Definitely, and I know that we have other parks that don't have signs that restrict dogs. I'm not sure if that came about as a result of complaints from neighbors. But okay, thank you for that recommendation. I was just curious.
Yeah, no problem.
Further comments from council on this item? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you for bringing that up to us. You talked, or Councillor Bennett talked about a passive park, and I'm wondering if you could recommend anything like benches and tables so that you could use your computer and just relax out there rather than a playground.
I
Because there
agree,
are
that would be nice.
playgrounds around, so.
There are quite a few playgrounds, so it's not necessarily missing from that neighborhood. But just the fact that it's a nice space would be nice, you can go for a picnic or something, or like you said, and there's no garbages. So if you were gonna go, you grab a coffee somewhere and go there, you'll have to carry it home with you or that kind of thing, so.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice to have the garbage. I see a lot of Tim Hortons cups all around the city, so, yeah, I think passive park is
Yeah, that would
is something
be
that would
great.
be nice to look forward to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Gunjo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for this topic. Just a quick question. By chance, did you ever hear one of your neighborhood speaking about keeping this park like that?
No, I haven't, but then again, I did, it had occurred to me to walk around the neighborhood and talk to people what they think, because I'm assuming the people who live right there, where it's literally neighboring their park, just love that it's like that, right? And that no dogs can walk through or anything, but I mean, it's called a park, it's owned by the city, and so, you kind of lose that, by living there. They've lucked out for probably 30, 40, 50 years, maybe longer, by having that, so, and being a nice, influence to their, yard, but at the same time, it's, it is a park, and so something, or even just like I said, being able to walk through with your dog, having garbages there, benches for kids to go and sit at or something like that,
I'm asking that because I understand it's normal what you're talking about, but maybe we can have on few months somebody bringing another point of view on the same topic. So that's why I want to make sure that there is not another point of view about these discussions. So I don't know if it is a matter that we should bring in the council, but maybe we can make like a sort of
petition type.
yes, petition of something like that, just to make sure that what you're talking about is accepted by the whole community, and then it will be very good idea to go forward.
Yeah, makes
I just
sense.
wanted to
Sounds good.
thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Any further comments on this particular item? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Fry has 4 different topics she wants to talk about this evening. The second one is the Optimist Park.
Yeah, so the Optimist Park is a skate park that I guess has been here for a long time, and but it hasn't been taken care of in terms of like the concrete. There's holes. There's, my daughter just got a skateboard and wanted to try, and my brother took her there, and he hadn't been there in years, and couldn't believe like the disarray of it, because like her wheels kept getting stuck in the holes, and she'd fall from just hitting the holes. So I mean, it's great that we have that kind of skate park that has been given for people to use, but it's not usable and it's dangerous, so especially kids on scooters or rollerblades or whatever, someone like my daughter who's new on the skateboard, hitting all those potholes and like unlevel concrete is not even safe. So that's why I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Councillor Good?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you for bringing that forward. Actually, I know it's been a topic of discussion in terms of the actual skate park. It was installed over 20 years ago. I remember going there in my teens, and I don't think it's been touched at all since then. As far as the actual playground goes, though, this summer there will be a reconstruction of that playground. And I know that the Optimist Club themselves contributed, I believe it was $75,000, so they've matched what we've put into it. So it should be a very lovely, accessible playground there. We do have an item that's still being discussed among council for, what is it called now? Well, the old Bob Turner, and what's to become in that area. And one of the suggestions is to create some kind of skate park within that youth space there. And there may be potential perhaps to reuse some of the elements, but again, they're quite old at this point. But I know that this is something that has been discussed in terms of the lifespan of that skate park kind of reaching the end of its life.
And yeah, and that's the thing, if it's gonna be there, then at least, you know, if it's not usable anymore, if it's dangerous, that kind of thing, then maybe it should just be removed, that kind of.
The location itself, if I can add to that, it's not a well-trafficked location in the sense that there's no natural pedestrian traffic that goes through that area, so there are poor sight lines. I think it was a great idea at the time, and now that we've had it for a while, there are probably some better places that we could consider putting something like that. So I'm not sure what would go there where the actual skate park is, but the fields are quite nice from what I understand. I know Councillor Ngujo organized an event there last summer, or over the summer, so.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just from a more general perspective, the City of Cornwall has a number of parks. I think we're around 6 or 7, give or take. We have basketball courts and tennis courts and swimming pools in all of the parks. And typically, a manager of Parks and Rec has a schedule to resurface and rebuild and repair. You could probably go to a number of parks and find that it's not perfect or pristine, but that's because, like everybody, there's a limited amount of money to go around. And so while I can't remember the actual schedule, and at that appropriate time I'll ask the manager about where Optimist fits in the grand scheme of things, but I think that if you were to go to a number of neighborhood parks, you could find probably some parts of that park that maybe look like they haven't been maintained, or maybe not to the standard that we would like in a perfect world. But the reality is there's only so much money to go around. Certainly, I think it's valid question about where Optimus is in terms of the scheduling, but just because I've had this discussion with a number of people throughout the municipality about the condition. In my case, I live in Riverdale. The tennis court's a little banged up.
Yep.
The basketball court, it does look, it's kind of beaten up as well, but once again, right now, I know Matisse Park, we've committed a fair amount of money to redoing a lot of the work down there, but it's ongoing, and so certainly there's probably some glitches here and there and everywhere, but there is sadly enough only a limited amount of money to go around.
Yeah.
And we do have a lot of parks and a lot of things we need to maintain. It's just a fact of life, I'm afraid.
Well, if I can say anything to that, it's just that, you know, the worry is of the danger that it could pose to people, and who would be sued? The city. So you'd be losing more money that way than correcting the problem, probably. So just throwing that out there.
Further comments? I'd just like to add that I would tend to agree that we do need to update our skate park. We need a new one. Councillor Good, we did purchase used ramps from, I think it was North Dundas a few years ago, but obviously we have a long way to go. I mean, looking at Akwesasne, they've done some remarkable work over there, and that's kind of the goal for us, but we're not there yet. We need to have the will and commit the funds to do it.
Our next topic is the dog park.
No park theme going on at all. So just, I had seen when I first moved, like, so I've been away. I went away to university, and, you know, just moved back to Cornwall recently. So, you know, of course, I'm starting to see, you know, it was looking for I came from Ottawa. There's just so many things. So you get back here and you're like, okay, what's here, right? So that's probably why I'm seeing these things. But anyway, and I remember moving here and seeing a bunch of things that, you know, that the city of Cornwall was going to be putting in a dog park and this kind of thing. And I know there is a paid one, and then there's sort of a, I don't even know what, it's not like a, you know, there's the Power Dam one, but it's not a dog park, and it's not, you know, legal or whatever it is. You know, people just have used it, and no one, you know, everyone's turning a blind eye. But the point is that there hasn't been one, there isn't one, and it was mentioned, and that was 2 years ago when I first moved here. So I was like, that's great, one's coming. So I'm just putting it out there, just wondering, you know, what's going on with this dog park that has been talked about and that's not coming.
Council? Councillor Bennett and Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. The recently completed waterfront master plan has a mention of a dog park in it. That master plan is created to be completed over I believe it's a 20-year period, or 10 years. I can't remember now.
I hope it's
25, thank you very much. Jeez. Anyway, it's in there. It has been discussed recently as a matter of like where would it go kind of a thing. But again, you know, to Councillor Hollingsworth's point, trying to figure out what we're going to pay for in that plan right away. What's the easy ones to check off, I guess. As far as I'm aware of, we have had some discussions about it, about where it should go, whether it even belongs on a waterfront. So it's being discussed. It's just we've got to need to come up with a consensus on that particular project. But I think just so you know, it is in a master plan somewhere, and so it's not going to go away, but it just needs to be, I guess, actioned.
Councillor Gardner, then Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You talk about OPG and not being a dog park in there. I've often been chased on the bicycle path by dogs that are let loose, and that could be dangerous.
Exactly.
I bike fast enough that I could get away from them. The other thing is, I think we're missing the boat because when I play golf in Morrisburg, they have 2 dog parks. They have a park for small dogs and a park for large dogs. And I don't know why we don't have a dog park here. I hope we'll discuss it a little more seriously in the future. Thank you for bringing that up.
No problem. I mean, coming from Ottawa, they're on every corner, and I mean, I'm probably, you know, I have no idea the number, but I would say 80% of our community has dogs. And so it would be nice that the city offers the people with dogs that would like to have a safe place, you know, with garbages and inside a fence that aren't going to go after bikers and that kind of thing. Because Gray's Creek's another one where people tend to go and you're not supposed to. So, so really, we have nowhere unless you pay for some sort of fence all I heard about or something like that. Yeah.
Councillor Hebert.
Just to also mention that it is in the waterfront plan, but it's also in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So it's not like we don't think there's a need. There's clearly a need. It's in 2 plans. Can only do so many things in a year, right? And I do believe that there was a budget where it came up, not the creation, but maybe a survey, and then it unfortunately didn't make it to the budget, if I remember correctly. It was pushed back. Again, I wish I could ask administration questions, but I feel like it's coming. It's slow. Progress takes time, unfortunately, sometimes. But it's clearly been identified as a need. It's in 2 very important master plans.
Councillor Good.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so it was actually part of our last budget, but it had been removed prior to the presentation of the budget by administration for a survey, which was $20,000 for the survey. So that does not include the actual creation of the park. So as you can see, you know, it's not just the money for the park itself. It's just putting out the money even for the survey is pretty considerable. And so it is something that was discussed, but I don't think any of us made a motion to put it back on. But definitely something that, you know, if we're hearing from the community that it's something that we need, that, I mean, we have to start with the survey, I think, before we can really move on and do anything else.
Understood.
Further comments? Thank you.
And Ms. Fry's last subject she'd like to discuss is a homeless shelter.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, this is a huge, you know, undertaking, and I understand that. So my main concern for coming here to talk, just put it on the agenda, is I would like to look at, you know, starting a working group within the community with maybe some counselors, maybe some, you know, influential business people, that kind of thing, to see, you know, what we can do about getting a homeless shelter here in Cornwall rather than shipping our, you know, homeless to Ottawa or Kingston, because I've seen firsthand and spoke to some people firsthand recently, you know, that are having a really hard time and have been literally, you know, the only services was the crisis team saying, okay, I'm going to drive you to Kingston or Ottawa, and that's a place where you don't know anyone, you know, so basically they have no hope once they're sent away from us. So And there's been young people showing up in our streets now too, and young people found out, like, in the Tim Hortons sleeping there, and the Tim Hortons people have been nice and letting them stay, but I'm talking 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds, that kind of thing. My daughter's in high school and said, Mom, you don't know how many kids sleep on the streets that I know. So, that we need to do better. That's it. I'd love to create a working group and start figuring this out.
Councillor Hubert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is a working group. It is predominantly led by the nonprofit sector. I will tell you that the nonprofit sector, along with the support of the municipality who sits on this housing and homelessness working group, has tried over the pandemic and, hit with a lot of obstacles. I think one of the major problems is the lack of capacity in the nonprofit sector. There was an opportunity, and there isn't enough. There's the support. There's tons of support. There's 20 people show up to these meetings every few weeks because there's a need, and there's all kinds of desire, but there was no capacity within the existing nonprofit sector to take this on. The committee still exists. There's currently a bit of a plan coming to the community. So there was a few organizations who have come together to pay for a consultant who's starting with a housing and homelessness mapping to identify what is available to our residents across the region. And ideally with that mapping, we'll be able to find the major gaps. And with a report from a consultant, we may be in better luck to apply for funding to make something happen. We had applied last year for funding through Trillium to do a major surveying and a needs analysis, and that didn't come through. So it's just kind of one thing after another. So it's not that it's not being addressed. It's just such a difficult issue to address. And I know at the beginning of the term, Mr. Mayor had mentioned possibly doing a committee or a task force like you mentioned, and we suggested that maybe we have a counselor appointed to that committee so there's more interaction with the city. But I do know that staff from the housing department are there and they are active, and so we are trying. It's not a solution. In the meantime, I do believe that if someone finds himself in a situation where they are unhoused, they can present themselves to emergency. And
so they're kicked out from emergency. I've spoken to quite a few. I've been working on this since I moved here.
Those are other issues, right? So that's
not an option.
Not for everybody, unfortunately, but that also, unfortunately, that means that there was an issue at a previous location. And so, so then we're just going to keep, at least in the nonprofit sector, try to see what we can do.
Okay. Thank you.
Further comments? I'd just like to elaborate on Councillor Hubert's points a little bit. I did mention starting a committee run by the city. However, when I did find out there was an existing committee, instead of duplicating efforts, I thought that it's better just to encourage the one that's already underway, especially considering they've laid a lot of groundwork. I am waiting for a formal request to appoint a member of council. Councillor Hubert sits on there in her other capacity, so while she is there from this group, she's not sitting as a councillor. So I am looking to appoint someone else from around the council table when I do receive that request. I haven't received it yet, unfortunately, but I know they're busy. I have met separately with Juliette Labossiere from the United Way a few times on this, and I recently met with Lynn Chauvet and Stephen Doris about it as well. And based on those meetings, there are a few things moving in the background at this time, which will provide potentially interim solutions, but we still need to reach that long-term solution as well. But I'd say stay tuned. There is something coming. Councillor Hubert?
If I may, and I appreciate you bringing up some of these other pieces, I definitely want to make sure that the United Way of SDG is recognized for the effort that they've been doing in the last several years. They've taken the lead on some of this work, and so there's often conversations about housing and homelessness and nothing's happening, and I assure you there are many individuals trying to work towards a solution, and I tip my hat specifically to Juliette Labossiere, the Executive Director of the United Way, who I'm sure loses sleep on a nightly basis because she's doing more than anyone else I know to address this. And so she leads that housing and homelessness working group. And so hopefully we'll see something come from that. And I'll make sure a member requests an appointment from council.
And that concludes the portion for Ms. Fry.
Thank you, Ms. Fry.
Next on the agenda is Kelly Bergeron.
Hello? Oh, should I
So-
just ask my question?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I know that in the budget, there was an announcement that there was funding finally for the Bob Turner statue. And we're going to start fundraising through our nonprofit Experience City to help raise $5,000 towards that. We've already fundraised about $1,000 from local donors. Unfortunately, you know, it's been 3 years since we announced, so I am pretty keen to like get a move on it because it's been over a decade since, you know, there was a promise that there would be something put in place of the Bob Turner Arena. And obviously, I think like anything for youth is amazing because that's what he was all about. So yeah, if you can relay to administration, like I'd love to see a timeline so I can get started on fundraising. That would be great. I don't want to keep it on the back burner any longer. I think it's about time that we honor him and make him shine somehow.
Councillor McIntosh.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I go back 20 years in this thing.
I know.
We are making progress. In fact, I was approached by a service club, and I'll share this with you after the meeting.
Great.
And they were interested in getting involved in it. I think we're moving. It was, you know, as you know, it was passed in budget, and that's a big move. And I would think something's going to happen by the end of the year. I also have the name of somebody who designs bronze sculpture. He's in Paris, Ontario. A guy called Robert Day. And I'm going to pass that information on to administration. Apparently, he's one of the best around. So we are moving ahead.
Cool.
We're a lot closer to this than we were a year ago. I'll tell you that right now.
Okay,
I
that's
think
good.
within 2 years, you're going to see it up and running.
Yeah, 2 years from now?
No, well, you know, we got to raise the money this year, and I think the fundraising isn't going to be a big issue.
Yeah.
By the time you get a design
I was
going.
told last year that it would be 18 months from last
Yeah, well,
January.
could be. It depends, you know, we have to track down somebody to design it
Yeah.
and build it, and then we got to pick a location. I have a preference for the Bob Turner, the Benson Center rather than Lime Park, but that'll be decided. I think you're on that ad hoc committee with us.
Councillor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Kelly, for bringing this forward, and thank you for your fundraising efforts on this. So I did reach out to our general manager this morning, and the direction and next steps that I heard from that was that there will be a public consultation exercise to look at you know, what kind of statue is appropriate, where it should be located, etc. I don't know how in-depth that's going to be. Hopefully it's happening very soon because it seems like that needs to happen in order for the project to move forward. So that is what I got back from Next Step. So
Good.
the wheels are turning.
Good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councillor Hebert.
I have no idea on timelines. It seems like Councillor Good is very proactive, but I know that there's $30,000 in our budget this year for this, right?
Good.
So we've committed at budget deliberations that this is happening. And I think that's a really good start. I don't know what a statue costs.
A lot more than
30,000,
that.
Yeah. But, you know, I feel like it's a good beginning in the city's contribution.
Yeah.
And if this takes longer than the next, let's say 8 months, there'll be another budget year where we could maybe put another $30,000. So there's a commitment, so it's just the timelines.
Any further comments?
Ms. Bergeron's second subject she'd like to discuss is the complaint process.
Yeah, so over the fall and the election season, we had the unfortunate issue about building permits. And unfortunately, it just seems like no one's kind of settled that with a lot of the businesses. Unfortunately, our business got caught in the crosshairs, and we've left the downtown and we've moved out of the downtown. I mean, I have my own personal complaint with the city that dates back several years that has not been addressed. So I'm here to ask what the process is and clarify it for other people in the community who don't understand what processes are and don't understand that they also have a voice at the table, and that they should be able to come to our city and council and be able to have like really good, frank, vulnerable discussions, because a lot of these people's livelihoods depend on this community supporting them. And a lot of people are very afraid to speak up because they depend on the money and it's part of their livelihoods, and they're afraid to ruffle feathers and upset people, but they just want to contribute to the community. So like my own process of a complaint has gone unchecked, and I'm saddened that it's gone that way. But I just want to clarify this process for everyone else in this community so that they know what they can do in the future.
Comments from council? Councilor Good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Sorry, I'm talking a lot of things. I did reach out to administration for some answers about some of these questions, because we don't always have the answers and we rely on them heavily. So I'm going to read this out verbatim as to what we received. So the process is included in the code of conduct. That's for council. I believe I understand that correctly. So the process, operational inquiries and complaints received from the public will be addressed by members of council as follows. Members who are approached by the public with inquiries or complaints regarding operational matters should encourage the party to contact the appropriate department for review or resolution. Where the member of public is reluctant to contact the department directly, the member should take the person's name, phone number, and details of the inquiry/complaint and advise them that the matter will be referred to the CAO for review/resolution. Members of the public should be encouraged to provide their issues/matters of concern in writing to the appropriate department. Where the inquiry/complaint is not resolved to the satisfaction of the member of the public, then the member of council shall refer the member of the public to the CAO to address any further action required if he or she deems it necessary. I don't know if that provides the clarity that you're looking for. And I would say in this, where perhaps there is a lack, is the tracking mechanism to ensure that complaints that are brought forward are responded to within a certain period of time with a clear resolution. So this is the process as it's written presently. I don't know, do you have feedback? What would you like to see in that complaint process?
I appreciate that, Sarah. I think the complaint process should be transparent, and there should be a formal process where if someone makes a complaint, someone has a certain amount of time to address it. Otherwise, that person will assume it's closed. And then if they need to bring it to the ombudsman or the Human Rights Tribunal, they can do so without worrying that it's still open. So no clear indications of that will lead someone to go down a higher route to get resolution. And that's not something you want to do. And it's just, I think transparency and accountability is really important. We've had a lot of good people leave this city. And I know the permit issue was going on with Kaluan Gallery, and we lost her because of it. And it's been very upsetting to watch other people, in tears because their business is their livelihood. And I know that there's always two sides to a story, but my experiences have not led me to believe that other people's experiences will be positive. It just hasn't been that way. I'm sorry.
Councillor McIntosh.
Yeah, my 8 years of council, we all get people complaining about various things, from dogs to speeding to in the winter snow plowing. And I can tell you, Kelly, that in my 8 years in council, I've had nothing but tremendous cooperation from the folks that sit in administration. Some folks think that we can tell them what to do. Sarah just read the code of conduct, and you want to read it again yourself, but we can't order anybody to tell them, public works person or recreation person, do it. They work for the CAO. I know what you're talking about. One particular case, we can't comment on this because it's in litigation right now. I know that when this came up, I can tell you that if we're talking about the case, this one situation I think you're talking about, that in a closed meeting, I think every member of council said to themselves, you know what, it's not, now we heard the other side of the story, and it's a little different. But I found in my experience dealing with the public that I've had nothing but tremendous cooperation from administration. I'll pass on a complaint to them, and 9 times out of 10, the person will call me back and say, thanks, we got it resolved. But there are complaints and there are complaints. And anyway,
Wow.
I wouldn't want anybody to go away thinking that we have administration people that really don't take things seriously. They really do. And they're a good team. I worked in the private sector, and I've been in the public sector. And when I was in the private sector, I wish I had some of these people working for me.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question. I hear, what does transparency mean? When you say I want it to be transparent, do you want us to air complaints
Communication.
publicly and
Communication back and forth, something that says, I'll get back to you in a couple days. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I just got over a cold. Anything that is communication, like just having a deadline on the other end, that's what's happened to a lot of the people who have invested their savings in the downtown. And it's been radio silence since the election. And, it's kind of hard to, transparency should be baked into the culture of the organization. It has to be built in from the leadership down.
you're saying when you talk transparency, you mean deadlines? Because transparency to me means
transparency's-
everybody should know what's going on, and sometimes
Transparency is
it doesn't.
it's communication, like just communicating with people what expectations are. That's it.
And in terms of accountability, what does that mean?
Accountability, I don't know. I thought you were a teacher. Are
I
you
know
a
what the word
teacher?
means, but what does it mean in the context that you're using it in?
Well, accountability means
Like
people.
accountability, in other words, when I think of accountability, are we talking about some kind of disciplinary action for somebody who doesn't get back to you? Or do we just say,
Oh.
don't do that again? Or what do you mean by that?
What I mean by accountability is actually people walking the walk. So, if they're saying we're promoting diversity and, people from all different backgrounds being in positions of power, it's about walking the walk. And it's about respecting the community and saying, you know what, that was a really sad thing that happened, or showing some empathy is accountability as well. But ignoring issues is not accountability.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Kelly.
Councillor Ngunjo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. Can I give you some water?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Fred. You're such a darling. I'm a little parched. It's okay, I'm not at the bar. Okay, now we know. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In fact, I had two questions, and Councillor Dane asked. The first one about transparency. You're going to tell me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you do not, or you're saying people are not trusting about administration. Is it what I can?
Did you say people don't trust administration?
Yes.
Oh,
Is it-
no, not
is it that-
necessarily.
Okay.
It's about communication and just empathy and just showing that you have been put in this position to represent the city of Cornwall. You're all elected, and it's about showing up for those people who don't have a voice. And so, you know, if I do something wrong at work and I tell my boss, like, you know, I screwed up, and if my boss comes back and says, okay, I'm glad you fixed it, did you learn from it? Okay, cool. But running away from problems isn't, we can't run away from everything. We have to address things as uncomfortable as they are. And yeah, it just would be nice to have that transparency that, you know, some of the businesses can be talked to or just kind of empathized with. You know, I know there's a lawsuit, but just showing up and being like, hey, I understand it's been hard. We're trying to fix this so that you can feel comfortable opening your business in the downtown. Because so many people have said that they're looking at moving out. And a lot of people have felt like they don't have a voice anymore, which is probably why it's very empty here. And apathy is not good for government. And yeah, I just want more people to be able to feel like they're supported by the community, and especially councillors and the mayor.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I would like to go further, just a little bit. Let's say we're not going to speak about complaint process.
Yep.
Do you think we can have another mechanism or something that we can do to bring complaints or to bring people that are complaining with administration or councillor, to put them together to try to find solution about
Absolutely.
the problem? Do you have any advice or ideas that you can share with us, please?
I don't have my own advice because I used my own advice and that didn't get me very far. I just think, you know, these are complex issues. These things are never just black and white. It's always gray. But it's really important, especially right now, this really weird time in our lives, that we show a lot of empathy. But we also, you know, we're more open to learning and more open to be accepting that we're not perfect. And like, you know, we can all work together to make the community a better place. You know, like you already know how I feel, and I'm still here, right? It's because I care about the community. And I'm sad that, you know, last year I felt like we had regressed back to the 1990s, because I just see the same problems that we had when I was growing up here in the 1990s. And it just seems like it's not progressing at the rate it should be progressing at. I know that's really harsh, but it wasn't just me who said that, it was multiple other people who have said that to me.
So improving communication is something that
Absolutely. That's what the most progressive companies are doing. That's how you attract the best talent. I commend the city for hiring a DEI expert. I think that's going to go a long way. They're going to give you those answers, because they're going to understand the most vulnerable populations and what they need. And they're the ones with the, you know, like, they don't have the strong, confident voice because they have been put in these positions their whole life. Like, just that DEI expert is a good way to get to those issues. But yeah, it would be nice to be acknowledged in some way through email, which is where I've been emailing.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor McDonald.
Mayor. Thanks for bringing the issue up, Kelly. But I have to concur with Councillor McIntosh on this, not to excuse us or to defend the city, but you've used an example, so I think I can use one too. Because sometimes people want to do things and we're not the obstacle. To give you a great example, like we all want to see more residences. And I know of a business, I won't name one, but I think I was among those who took it to the max. We even brought it up at AMO because we could not issue a permit for a residence over a storefront unless there had been proof that it had been a residence in a previous generation, without it undergoing an environmental assessment, and not just a simple assessment, but a more complicated, the next level, and I'm sure Jamie Frothrop could tell me the term I want, but I won't ask him. But in any case, it seemed to be such a dead end that I brought it up at AMO, and we got a call at the CPEG committee, because this is the committee at the city that works on these things. We got a call from the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Awesome.
Basically giving us, though, the hard news that this was, the building code, we don't write the building code. But God help us if we don't comply with it.
Yeah.
So the problem was, and it wasn't even a problem, the building code keeps us all safe. But what happened after that, I'm not sure. I know the business was communicated with, but they may not have advertised the response they got, because it's a confidential private matter. Like, you can't do what you want to do because of this. Well, nobody's going to go to the paper the next day and say, okay, folks, it really wasn't the big bad city, it was the big bad province. Or, like, it gets kind of foolish. So sometimes those private instances have to stay private. And it might look to the rest of us like it's a wall of silence and a dead end. But really, it's just respecting people's right to not necessarily have their weaknesses or whatever advertised. So, because I think our permit office often has the most difficult task, because they wear a lot of blame for a lot of things. But the fact is, we've got a lot of building going on all around the city, millions of dollars worth of development, obviously all with permits. But sometimes you get a high-profile case that there's a glitch, and it's not in the city's interest or anybody's interest to speak publicly about the problem, and well, especially if something's going through the courts. So that's just tricky, because it's sometimes hard to get the bad news about why you can't do what you want to do, especially when you know it would be a really great idea, but just can't be done. So I guess we can certainly agree this is a really complex issue.
Oh, yeah,
And
I get it.
We'll be fighting our way through it, I think, forever.
Okay.
Further comments?
Ms. Bergeron's next subject is crosswalks and dog parks.
I know. It seems so simple. No, I won't talk about dog parks. Again, I already know. Crosswalks, so I think the big question is that been in this pandemic for 3 years, and people have been talking about placemaking, and people are relying on parks for their mental health or remote work, or the city, okay, sorry. The city can definitely use it to promote tourism and attractions and everything. And yet every time, we go and we ask for something like, painting a crosswalk or doing a dog park, it just seems like another area around us is doing those things. And so my big question is, like, are we going to be able to do these placemaking things that are going to do really good things for mental health and, people who've been stuck in their homes and seniors? It's really important for people to get outside and feel safe in their neighborhoods. So I'm just here to advocate for more placemaking. They don't have to be expensive projects, but anything just as simple as getting kids to like paint a mural. I know murals aren't a favorite thing around here, but you go to any city, anywhere, and there's murals everywhere. So I think, you know, more things like that to engage the community and especially the youth. I think that'll do really well this summer and fall while everyone's still healing from the pandemic.
Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 2022's budget does have $15,000 in there, so it's put away in a cookie jar for a rainbow crosswalk.
Good.
What we were waiting on, and I just sent an email to Mr. Fothrop, there was a report that was going to come from the Transportation Association of Canada about guidelines for pedestrian crossing and what they advised and whatnot. And so I just emailed to ask the status of that report, because I think that's what we were waiting on, to see when and where we can do this crosswalk. But I think putting the money in the budget was a good first step. Now we need to have that information back. I think that's just being extra cautious, since many municipalities are doing it, unfortunately. So it's very disappointing when we couldn't go through with it when it was first brought up a couple of years ago now. But I'm looking forward to that email from Mr. Fothrop to hear back from that report and hopefully move forward with that, because I think that could really brighten up at least the downtown. That's just one thing. Obviously, there's a lot more that can happen. We did see some new beautiful murals in Lamouter Park in the last couple of years as well. And I think there's still a lot to come. And there was, and my brain is full of other things, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but there was a new committee that was started that doesn't have placemaking in the name, but definitely has the essence of placemaking within it. And I believe one of the mandates of that committee will be to revise or review the Culturescape Committee. Thank you, Councillor Bennett, for which will look at all of that, right, and come up with a plan for our community to include more of that public art piece that we are missing. I think there was a few good little steps, and then so I think there's more to come on that.
Great. That's great. Thank you.
Further comments? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just like forests. Yeah, I just, you know, watching climate change happen and just watching the sprawl happen here. I'm just wondering, I know it's probably part of a longer plan for the city and how we need to accommodate more housing and this and that, but just, is there any sort of way we can stop the sprawl is all I'm asking. We're seeing so many like rodents and animals in the city that shouldn't be here now. So, and we've seen this over and over again where more people create sprawl and then it costs more for the city to put services out to those areas. So that's my concern, is that it's not only affecting, you know, the ecosystem, but that we're not going to be able to afford the cost of putting services out to those areas. And we have lots of infill. And I think the potential Domtar project would be, I don't want to say Domtar, but the waterfront project is a really interesting one. And I think remediating that site is really good and important. But more sprawl is just going to create more problems for our city, people who can't afford transit. And yeah, I just keep seeing it. Like, we were driving up Brookdale and it's just like it's leveled there. So I don't know what the strategy is or where that's going, but I know a lot of people ask that question.
Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Gardner.
Yeah. When I look at my backyard some nights, I see a lot of animal activity, and then I realize they were there first. When it comes to cutting down forests and that, it's a tricky balance here. We've got to build more homes, and most of the land is occupied by trees, and it's pretty hard for a builder to go in and say, I'm going to map around all these trees and put the sewer lines in certain spots. So it's a bit of a trade-off. I can tell you, though, I think Cornwall is in better shape than if you go to Southern Ontario, where they clear and build 150 homes one shot.
Or the Greenbelt.
if you ever fly over the city, we still have a lot of canopy. It's still a pretty good-looking city.
But I know we lost a lot after the last storm too,
Well,
right? So,
Yeah, I couldn't even guess at the number of trees that
Yeah.
are down. It's,
just, I know, like,
And-
it's good for the health of the community as well to have that
Yeah.
tree coverage.
yeah. What I would like to see is that we have a tougher replacement policy. When people develop subdivisions, a certain number of trees have to go in there. And replacement, for every tree taken down, we got to replace
Yeah.
one. But I know what you're talking about, the Brookdale Avenue.
Yeah.
There's a lot of assessment coming in there.
Yeah.
And on Power Dam, I'm not sure what's going on there. I imagine it's going to be another subdivision as the one across the street. But these are things either we're going to build homes or not.
Yeah.
And to infill isn't going to solve the housing problem. There's going to be a couple houses here, one there, one there.
So the good compromise is just like plant trees
yeah,
as much as possible. If those developers can like adopt a forest and plant a forest in the space of that to replace that canopy, I think that would be a great solution. But yeah, right now, I mean, I'm just thinking about the next generations, looking at what's going on with climate change, and it's not getting good. And I mean, the forests that they've grown up with are being torn down. So I'm just thinking about the future generations.
I think we've taken down hundreds and hundreds of ash trees because of the ash borer problem. And I know the administration can't get involved in the conversation tonight, but I think we've got a pretty good replacement plan there where it's tree for a tree.
Awesome.
With that. So that's my feeling. We got to create housing. Sometimes that means clearing land, but there's also, I think we should get into a more aggressive tree replacement policy.
Awesome. Great.
Councillor Gardner, then Councillor Good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a sore spot with me, the clear cutting. And I agree with Councilman McIntosh. But at the end of the day, the rodents, the birds, the small animals, I don't see any more turtles anymore going across Power Dam because they've destroyed their habitat. So yeah, you bring that up, it sticks in my craw. It makes me bloody mad when I go by 5 or 10 acres of land that have been completely clear cut. That should not happen, okay? And you're right about the putting one tree in for one taken out, and that has to happen. We've discussed this, I've discussed it at council.
Yeah.
It's wrong to do that, to clear cut the way they do. And I think that the contractors don't give a damn. And that's at the bottom of at the end of the day. So good for you for bringing this up.
Well, and I mean, I think there's been studies that have done research where they can actually put a price tag on what a tree actually costs or for revenue sources for the city. Like it decreases air conditioning, like it helps people with mental health. I think Toronto might have done a study like that where it's like $100 per tree. Like that's how much of an asset it is to the community. We have to start looking at things. We have to look at our public parks like they're huge assets, and trees especially. So yeah, we'll keep fighting.
Good, so will I. At the end of the day, you're talking about air conditioning. When I play golf, the one thing I don't do is not go down the tree line, because when you go down the tree line, you've got a 10-degree cooler air in that area. So the more trees we put in,
Yeah.
the better it's going to be for us.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Councillor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Kelly, this is such an important topic, and I know during this year's budget, we allotted a certain amount. I can't remember the number, but it was, I believe, to plant 600 trees, I want to say. And, you know, we had amongst ourselves outside of these budget deliberations, some conversations, a few of us had anyways, in regards to, you know, we're putting money into planting new trees, but we don't have a real concrete plan to prevent the clear cutting from happening. And this isn't just like 1 or 2 trees, but entire forest, and we all see it. It doesn't matter what corner of the community you're in. You'll see it in the east end, and the west end, north end, and it is sprawl. I think part of the problem is that, you know, a lot of these areas are already zoned for development. So when proposals come through to have them developed, they're zoned that way, it goes through. I am under the understanding that the Environment and Climate Change Committee will be presenting a tree bylaw at some point for us to review. I don't know what that is going to look like yet, but I am hopeful that it will help kind of curb this loss of trees, because there is a real financial impact. These ecosystem services that they provide, there is a monetary value to it. It's not just, oh, it feels nice and we love trees. It really, there is an economic benefit to maintaining our tree cover. I know there's been some criticism about the proposed development on Domtar, a 21-story, 18 and 21 tower high-rise. And, you know, I have my own thoughts about it, and I won't get into that, but at the very least what it is it's dense infill, and it prevents further deforestation, and it makes use of city infrastructure that currently exists without us having to, you know, massively expand our services in order to meet, you know, sprawling suburbs. So I couldn't agree with you more. I know that it's one of the items that was, I believe, identified on the last strat plan about infill and infill opportunities, identifying those opportunities and incentivizing them. And I think maybe we need to look at both ends, one on the incentivization side and figure out what we can really, really do to incentivize. And I know we do have some strategies for that, but also the disincentivization. So are there fines involved? Do you have to pay a certain amount if you're going to clear cut X number of trees? Do you have to commit to replanting an equal amount in lieu? Like, I don't know what that's going to look like, but I definitely think that it's something that that we're all very interested in here. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a couple points. I personally, I think most people agree that clear cutting and just randomly chopping down trees, I don't think in this day and age anybody is going to say they're fine with it. I suspect the majority of council and probably anybody who's ever run for council and generally is going to try to say save a tree if you can. In my case, I have a big one coming down tomorrow because it's falling all over the place. They'll probably quietly cry in my room as I see it come down, but
Plant another tree
we
in
will
its honor.
probably plant another 5 or 6. But just some points. First of all, as far as infilling goes, most urban planners will tell you that you're right. As far as the city is concerned, we've kind of endorsed a couple of incentive programs to try to encourage infilling. The one that most people are familiar with is the corner of Pitt and Second. We just recently, at the last budget, supported a second project down on Montreal Road, right beside the old La Maison, if you're familiar with the area. Certainly as one councillor, I'd like to see us, the old Cornwall site for us dinosaurs who know what I'm talking about, and the Poirier Furniture lot that's currently sitting vacant. Those are definitely infilling, and I think that the city is, based on our track record, is at least committed. And you could use the Cy Miller Arena as well. Yep. Committed to that kind of project. And when we redid our plan, our zoning bylaw, I wanted to go higher. Currently, we're 11 stories. I said, let's go 75 stories, but that's just me. So I think the city's at least demonstrated it's prepared to try to encourage that kind of thing, and I think most of us would agree that anytime you can keep it inward. However, the other side of the coin is most of us would also acknowledge we've talked about a housing crisis and a housing shortage in the city of Cornwall, so I find myself reluctant to try to discourage builders from building houses.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
we don't have enough houses, so when somebody says, I'm going to chop down trees to build houses, well, I mean, what's the right answer? Do you save the tree or save the house? It becomes a very challenging kind of thing to... The other thing is most people would know, and perhaps you're familiar, is that if you have a greater housing stock, the price of houses don't go up as fast. So if you have a shortage, when somebody does put a house on the market, they can charge top dollar, whereas, so any way I can encourage housing, I have to consider that, and yes, agree, we want to protect the environment, but as Councillor McIntosh pointed out, it's tricky to figure out what's the right answer. It's not like a nice, clean, this is the path we should choose.
There are people with solutions out there, though. Like, there are like top environmentalists and urban planners who would be able to address that as well, I think.
So as far as tree planting, the city is committed, I believe the actual number was $300,000. And when I asked the manager at the time if we could bump up that money, and I don't know if there was a will amongst council to do so or not, the problem that he suggested, which is valid, is he doesn't have enough human resources to plant more trees. And anybody will tell you that if finding people to do anything right now is difficult. Everybody.
Well, good thing we have AI.
To trying to, I don't know if AI can plant trees or not, but
robots.
The point is, having done some tree planting in my time, that also is
get
not
out there, Dean.
is not as easy as it looks. The point I'm simply making is that it's not necessarily a matter of commitment by council, but rather a human resource problem. That even if we had $1 million today and said we're going to plant 1,000 trees, we may not have enough human beings to actually do that, and AI is fine, but that means you have to buy the robots, which also costs money, so it's not nice and clean and simple.
Yeah.
Do I agree it's a problem that needs to be addressed? Absolutely. But as I pointed out, and I think all of us wrestle with this, do I stop housing for the environment? Do I save the environment for where's the, so you try to find that middle ground. It's a never-ending kind of tug-of-war, I suppose, but I suspect that certainly I would like to see us commit more money next year in the budget to more tree planting. We've talked about improving our canopy. There are some spots in the city that don't have enough canopy right now, so certainly that has to be a priority, and I think staff are aware of that and kind of pursue that as the opportunities arise, so we're trying.
Thank you.
Councillor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Hollingsworth stole my thunder. I pulled up the budget item. It is $300,000. Yeah, it is $300,000.
That's great.
And it is a tree canopy management program. So I'll read the first little bit. The goal of the tree canopy management program is to ensure the city of Cornwall has the necessary resources to ensure the maintenance of our existing tree canopy and to encourage the expansion of the canopy throughout the city, the entire city. So I'm hoping that also includes residential. And then at the very bottom, it says that by the end of 2022, we had planted 767 new trees to replace our complement that we've unfortunately had to lose. So, but this is one piece, right? So I think a tree canopy or a tree policy has been discussed and many, many years ago, and maybe we weren't ready or we weren't aggressive enough. I think it's time now, and hopefully that'll come from the Climate Change Committee to council to approve so that we can encourage, I don't know, I guess we can do a little bit more than encourage, but ensure that our residents are planting when they are taking down. And I would go further to the 1 for 1. I'd say 2 for 1.
2 for 1.
Right? Why not? Because it's the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, so we might as well make up for it right now. And then Councillor Good just kind of whispered to me, and since she already spoke, I'll mention Bill 23 isn't helping us in any way, shape, or form with all of this, right? So this goes a little bit back to what Councillor McDonald mentioned earlier. We get elected and we think we're all mighty and powerful, but turns out we are just, I don't know, little puppets for the province sometimes. I hate to say that, but there are things we can do. Absolutely, there are things we do on a weekly basis at our meetings. We can make change, but the province does limit us significantly to the point where we can get our fingers snapped, unfortunately. So, but anyways, thank you for bringing this up,
Yeah,
Kelly.
no problem. Cool. That's good.
Further comments? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Bergeron.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Laura Kreitz, who wants to speak to council about the former Bob Turner site.
Good evening, Mayor Towndale and members of council. My name's Laura Kreitz, and I wish to provide feedback on the use of the former Bob Turner site located on the corner of 4th and Marlborough Streets. I prepared some notes here, if that's okay. I'm just going to read from these. So I actually own a property adjacent to the site, and I think I can offer some valuable insight. I know there's two different visions for the future use, a youth space and an affordable housing development. I'm just concerned that a high-density, affordable housing development similar to what's located on the corner of 9th and McConnell would change the character of the neighborhood, cause increased traffic and noise. 4th Street's relatively quiet, one-way street made up of single-family homes. To me, the Bob Turner site is not an appropriate spot for such development given the surrounding low density and lack of amenities. Most amenities are at least a 15-minute walk away unless traveling by bus or car. I'm in support of keeping the site as green space in a football field. There's very limited green space in the inner city, and the closest public park to my house is about a kilometer walk. There are many individuals and families that use the Bob Turner site for recreation. For example, last week there was a couple playing tennis in the parking lot and 2 little kids learning to ride a bike. Using this site as parkland for all generations would be the best use of this site. It can be enhanced by using it as a youth space, other recreation, dog park, or even an eco garden. I am disappointed there was no public consultations to my knowledge before bringing these reports to council. I only learned about the reports last week after the council meeting. I'm wondering if the city has plans to hold public consultations with neighboring landowners. A few suggestions I would have are an open house with advance notice via mail out, or send out online polls similar to what was done with the Portlands redevelopment. And just thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know there's lots of moving parts to this, and there's a lot of studies that have been done on this site, but I just hope that council and administration can consider my feedback when making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to answer one of your questions quickly, there will be a report coming back with a recommendation for a town hall.
Okay.
And there will be an opportunity, will be announced in advance, and the topic of that town hall will be specifically that property.
Thank you.
Comments from council? Councilor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for bringing this forward. We've had some really interesting conversations about this at our last meeting and then at the previous meeting where the proposal was presented to us to turn part of that park into a youth space. I also live nearby and I'm quite familiar with the area. I really am of two minds because it's hard to ignore the need for housing. And I don't know if there's a happy medium that can be struck where we're able to maintain the majority of the park space as well as create some opportunities for housing. And I haven't had an opportunity to hear other than from yourself. And I was actually looking through my email. I thought you had emailed me earlier. I was going to say, oh, we've spoken through email, but it was another Laura. So my apologies, not the same Laura. But thank you for bringing this forward. I think it's important that we do hear from people in the surrounding areas. And we deferred the decision at our last council meeting, I think, because we need more information about what we're going to do there, and we understand the sensitivity of both housing and the need for youth recreation in our community as well.
Thank you. If I may add, I guess public consultation at all stages, I think, should be considered. I agree, like if there is housing proposed, maybe something not such high density, like different densities should be considered. And I don't know if there's opportunities for the public to have feedback on that or what that would look like, but maybe a consideration.
Further comments from council? Thank you, Ms. Kreitz.
Thank you.
Next up is Nick Seabrook, who would like to speak to council about Building and Bylaw Office.
Hi, everybody. So the permit issue was referenced earlier by Kelly, and I mean, we're all familiar with what happened. CTV did a story explaining a dispute between some local businesses and the Building Bylaw Department over how their permits were being handled. And, you know, I know that complaints aren't indicative always of the overall experience, of, a system. I mean, when I was editor, I never got a single letter to the editor from someone who thought everything was going all great and hunky-dory. So, but it is a matter of perception. I do think that this issue created a negative perception of the city, of the building and bylaw department. I think it hurt the relationship with some of the local businesses in town. I mean, even when I was at Seaway News years ago, I would hear from people who had a negative experience in trying to get the permit approved. And I've heard since from businesses both within and outside of the downtown who've told me the same thing. So I would like to know what the city's doing to repair this image. I know you can't talk about something that's currently in litigation, but what are you going to do about the issue of perception? What are you doing to repair the relationship with the businesses and particularly the ones affected in this case?
Comments from council? Councillor McIntosh.
Yeah, Nick, one of the things that during the pandemic, the city established a fund to help businesses, most of them on Pitt Street. And Bob Peters is the one that came up with that idea. And we doled out interest-free loans, I think, and grants to people, get them through the pandemic. I think that was a great step when it came to public relations, working with people. I would like to know, take a guess, the number of permits the city deals with in a year is a pretty high number, I would think. And I would think the vast majority of those permits go through, no problem. I know I took out a permit one time and followed the rules, and everything unfolded, and the contractor went ahead and did his job and worked well with the city. I wouldn't want to base paint a negative image of the building and bylaw offices on a news story. We were both in the news business, and we know how that works. And Dennis was too. But I think overall, I think our building officials do a good job. There's a reason why there's a sign on the counter at the building office: abusive language will not be tolerated. It's a very touchy thing when somebody thinks they can do something, and the big bad building official comes in and says, no, you can't do it that way. And I think Elaine alluded to the fact that a lot of these are provincial laws, not municipal laws. So the city's enforcing municipal laws. And I've heard complaints too over the game. As you said, people that have a good experience aren't going to stand at the corner pit in a second and say, man, did I have a good experience with the city today? It works the other way.
But CTV also isn't going to write a feel-good story about the City of Cornwall Building and Bylaw Office, whether they deserve it or not. They've written this, they put out this story, it's out there, and it's created a negative perception.
I know, but there were things in that story I'm going to go back to the closed meeting we had when things, we were told the other side, and I think to a person that was at that council meeting, all said, you know what? Okay, now we know the story. The public doesn't know that story yet, thanks to litigation. In litigation, you cannot discuss issues. But I'd like to stick up for our bylaw people. They have a tough job to do. There are going to be people that say, gee, I don't think I should have to do that. And but the rules are there. If a bylaw official, chief building officer, signs something and the thing collapses, guess who's getting sued? The guy that signed the document. So I don't think the city got the, nobody in Toronto saying, gee, in Cornwall, the building people are really tough down there, or in Ottawa. I think was one of those things that made the 6 o'clock news and went away very quickly.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Just a couple of points and then perhaps a question, if I might. So what's interesting is, as Claude pointed out, we initiated interest-free loans during the pandemic. We suspended parking fees downtown and to try to help, the local businesses to a significant impact to the corporation. I think the number was somewhere around $600,000, give or take. And what's interesting is the media didn't really pick up on that the way they did said issue that you've referenced already. I guess my point is I can't tell the media what to print and what not to print, that they do what they do. That's the whole freedom of the press thing. And as far as permits and the like, we have a contractor in town who's currently built two seniors residence and has another building going on downtown. So it's not like we're like doing it wrong necessarily. Maybe one individual might feel that we are doing it wrong, whereas other builders seem to be okay with it. The question I have to you, and then of course we talk things like loads, laws and codes, and who's going to be liable if a building inspector or a permit wasn't issued properly and something bad happens. Well, I think we all know how that typically trickles out. The question I would ask you, in terms you talk about try to repair our public image, what would you suggest?
I would suggest, at the very least, I haven't heard yet, has there been meetings with these businesses? Have they've had a hearing? It goes back to kind of what Kelly said. Has there been communication? At the very least, I would begin with that, and maybe do a bit of a charm offensive. You're right. You can't make the media write good stories about city administration, city council. Sometimes you have to, as an organization, put it out there yourself. A lot of organizations now manage their own media and try to get their own stories out there. And again, I feel that this story in particular, again, complaints aren't indicative of a system as a whole, but it has created a negative perception amongst some in the business community. And, that's basically the heart of my question is what is being done? Again, meetings, town halls like this, I think is a step in the right direction, things like that.
Now, the other thing that's noteworthy is, and I'm going to talk more general rather than specific, but if we're in the midst of litigation with anybody, typically most lawyers will tell you that don't say anything until the issue is resolved. So I'm not sure about this particular issue. We haven't had an update recently, but any time we're in the middle of anything, any litigious action, we typically are advised by our legal counsel, because it's the standing cliche, anything you say can and will be used against you. And so my point is, and I don't know about this case, but any given case, it's not necessarily in the corporation's best interest to take to the media and start discussing these things in public.
Absolutely. You can't discuss litigation, ongoing cases in public, but if you win this case, if you lose this case, do you have a plan on how you're going to address that in the media? Do you have a plan once this case is settled, how you move on from it, how you repair that relationship?
Fair enough. We'll take that under advisement. Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Nick.
Councillor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for bringing this forward, Nick. It's obviously a challenging situation. I don't think anyone ever goes into the permitting department super excited, because it's kind of nerve-wracking. There are a lot of specific criteria that need to be met, and it's evolving constantly. There's also, this issue that I think the city of Cornwall is empathetic towards business owners, and we know that it's in our best interest to encourage business owners to be successful. We want that. Oftentimes, and I think in most of these situations, the person that the city is dealing with is not actually the business owner, but the landlord. And so you have this middle party who's not necessarily cooperating with the criteria required in order to allow them to have the permits. Ultimately, what ends up happening is the business owners, the tenants, are suffering as a result. And I'm not sure, if they're equally angry with their landlords for providing them with a lease to an establishment that isn't suited for their needs, or if they're more angry with the city because we're unable to approve their permits. In terms of communication, I don't really know what can be done for that. I don't want to say that there's nothing that can be done. I think there is, but it's challenging because you can't go divulging information about someone else's permit status to someone who has not actually requested the permit. That, to me, just seems natural. I do know that they're in the process of developing, I believe anyways, an online portal to track permit applications. And I think that will allow for a greater level of accountability and perhaps for us as a council, maybe to have a sense where there may be some challenges, because it's not to say that things are operating perfectly smoothly, everything's A-okay, and we're like, la, 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 la. I think, you know, when we're hearing repeatedly that there are issues, that it would be unwise of us not to question whether or not there's validity to that. And I think that, you know, reflecting back on ourselves to figure out what can we do to improve the process is wise. I did have conversations regarding another small business that's trying to open right now, and talking to our economic development officer for what they're doing in terms of creating a relationship where businesses have an outlet and or a resource to obtain information. And I was provided with a number of different ways in which they try and prepare businesses to, you know, one, like we've seen the ads, work with a realtor, otherwise you can get yourself into a pinch. But knowing what it is that are required for the permits for your intended use and making sure that your landlord has sorted all of that stuff out before committing to signing a lease. So there were 3 things, or 4 things rather. So one of the topics that were offered was understanding how to find a commercial property for your business. Another one was business building permits and how they impact your business. The third one was community improvement plan, funding for small business. And then there was an upcoming one, what to know when opening a food or restaurant business. So I do think that there's an effort that's being made, and I don't think there's any way to... maybe we do need to write our own good press in this regard. And I think you're right. I do think we need to do some work to repair our situation, but I don't think it's as crystal clear as it seems. And I think that, you know, it's worth noting that that relationship between the business and the permit department is not a direct relationship typically. So, yeah.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, first off, what you just said is kind of the conversations I've been having when it does come up. But I just wanted to really quickly, just because you alluded to it, but the bylaw departments aren't necessarily dealing with the business owners; they're dealing with the landlords, and so communication. I don't think in that instance would be appropriate. I don't know if you can talk to the business about their landlord and what's going on and what the landlord's doing. Our relationship is with the property owner. So I'm a little bit leery about what that communication to that business dealing with a landlord and an issue would look like, because you just can't go and give the property owner's business and have that conversation. So that's a tricky one too, and it's a fine line to walk. So I'm just a little bit leery about saying that communication is easy, because I don't think it is in that particular kind of instance.
Yeah, and you guys can't control if there's a negative story that comes out in the media. I'm just saying that when it does come out, you know, it is on the city as an organization to respond to it and, you know, to rebuild any sort of confidence that a media story might undermine.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think too, the city has maybe a whole different attitude toward public relations and public image. We care very much about public relations, and obviously we communicate privately with those with whom it's appropriate that we communicate. But when it comes to public image, that's not our main concern. Even in a discussion like this, where we have maybe a difference of opinion over permits or whatever, we don't want to win in the public image. We just want, at the end of the day, for that business to get back on track, pay their taxes, and everything just chugs along the way it should. And if we've, you know, had a challenge to our public image for a few months, we live with it. I mean, that's because we're not out to make ourselves look good. People obviously will judge us and we'll do well, but public relations is important to us. But public image, it's very, it's such a fleeting thing to cater to, you know?
But a negative public image could damage the city if it's held both, you know, by people who are living here and people who might want to move here.
Yes, and so that's why we have a public information coordinator, and we churn out a lot of good news with him. But as far as fighting a confrontation with an individual business, we'll never do that. That's like, you know, Big Bully stamping down the objector or whatever. We don't do that.
I think communication can be done in an empathetic, conciliatory kind of way.
I can't see it doing publicly without humiliating somebody, and we just don't do that. Nothing to gain there.
Further comments? I just think, Nick, we don't have the answers tonight. I think we have a lot of work to do in all areas, including this one, frankly. We need more time to work on it. It's not an overnight fix. I know it's been a few months since this council's taken office, but I would argue that we went through budget. We've been working with issues such as asylum claimants and other things, and frankly, it has tied up some of our time, to be honest with you. Like, I could show you my schedule and what it looks like, quite frankly, and how many hours I spend here. You know, and that's not to say like I'm here all the time, or I'm just saying like I work hard, but it's the reality. It starts to impact it. Whenever things come out of left field, it does impact the amount of time we spend on ongoing issues. And unfortunately, it ties it up. So we have more work to do. That's the honest answer.
And I think meetings like this are a great step in the right direction. I can't remember the last time there's been a meeting like this, and I think that doing meetings like this kind of speaks to the issue I was trying to bring up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Seabrook. So at this time, I know there's a few members of the public who are here who did not register to speak. I'd invite you to come up, but before you start speaking, I just ask you to please state your name so we have it for the record, as this is a public meeting. So the mic is open for whoever wants to come up first.
Yeah, are you Ms. Burke? Ms. Burke? Ms. Burke did register
Okay,
today.
I'm sorry, Ms. Burke, I don't have you on my sheet here, so.
No.
Hi. So I'm someone who puts a lot of hours into collecting a lot of information of anything that goes around in our current situations of what we live in and whatnot. And very often I go by the saying, connect the dots. So I just want to know, last year in March, the provincial government decided to refund all the citizens on their car plates, which is fine. And then now, from now on, our car plates are free. But then you think a government never really gives something away without having a consequence. Then last fall, there was an event here in Cornwall for Cornwall being a smart city. I said, okay. And recently, the city of Cornwall, gotta put on my glasses. Goes to show you the gray hairs. Was in favor of approving the climate action plan. So my question is, when you connect the dots, that's actually the perfect recipe for a 15-minute city. Is that the plan? Anyone? Thing is that if you want me to give an example, if we take, let's say, our neighbor, Quebec, they already have 40 cities aimed at that they're going to become 15-minute cities. And I mean, this is worldwide. If you go to the UK, for example, take Oxford, they have become a 15-minute city. Just the US, Cleveland, has become a 15-minute city. And it's a nightmare, obviously, for everyone. But I know there is an agenda, of which I'm not going to go into details, but I just wanted to know if Cornwall had any plans for either in a far or near future.
Councillor Good.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I have some concerns about perhaps the interpretation of what a 15-minute city is. So my understanding of it is that the theory of a 15-minute city is one in which work, shopping, healthcare, education can all be reached within a 15-minute walk or bike from
Right.
any point in the city.
Right.
Pretty good goal, or would we want to travel a further distance to obtain those services?
Well, yeah, because if you want to, let's say, I live on Second Street.
Yeah.
And if I would want to go onto Brookdale, well, I know that it's not going to take me 15 minutes to walk all the way there.
So if I may, I think some of the concern that's come out of this theory of 15-minute cities is that the intention of it is to restrict people's movement.
There you go.
But I would like to emphasize the fact that that is not the intention of the 15-minute city. We
I know.
have a priority of active transportation, and we want to ensure walkability within our neighborhoods, within our communities. So I live downtown as well. I don't have a grocery store that I can walk to. That's a bit of an issue. Now, a 15-minute city allows for those amenities to be accessible to people on foot or bike within a small area. So as far as I'm aware, we have not had conversations about falling in this 15-minute city category. That being said, the premise of a 15-minute city is positive, and I would like to be very, very clear that it is a positive thing. Having access to services within a 15-minute bike or walk, it is not a matter of restricting movement. It is a matter of increasing access, and that is something that I very, very much support. And I hope that it would be something that you would support as well.
Oh, not at all.
You want to go further than so what is the goal? I'm very curious. Not the theory. No one's going to put a wall around neighborhoods in the city.
Actually, yes, that's what it is.
So
That's
I
the
would
goal.
say that if your question is, does the city of Cornwall have any intentions to restrict the movement of its citizens? I would say no, not at all. But does the city of Cornwall have every intention to make the services that citizens use and need accessible? Yes.
So if the provincial government were to impose onto the city to do or to go ahead with that plan,
To go ahead with what plan?
the 15-minute city.
So do people in 15-minute cities, they're not allowed to leave?
That's right.
But that isn't actually true.
It is.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Just a point of clarification. Municipalities are at the disposal of the province. So if whatever legislation the provincial government passes with regards to cities, we don't have any legal recourse to say, no, we're not doing it. Now, I don't really know anything about 15-minute cities.
Okay.
You are the first person that's ever broached the topic to me.
Oh, really?
In my 2
Okay.
seconds, I quickly Googled it in an attempt to try to figure out what it is you're telling me.
Okay.
And so I'd probably need some time to process
Look
and
into it.
digest. I've never heard it discussed at the council table. I've never heard an administrator talk to me at any point about any kind of notion of 15-minute cities. So the concept is completely foreign to me, and maybe now I'll have some evening time reading. But that being said, regardless of what the this council wants to do, if the province says this is the law with regards to cities, that's it. We're not a separate entity. We are beholden to the province. We are at the will of the province. We are at the whim of the province. In fact, if the provincial government passed legislation tomorrow that said you must amalgamate with some other city or some other village or some other town, that's it. We really have no legal recourse. So I don't know much about 15-minute cities, but I do know that if the provincial government says you're amalgamating with your neighborhood community, that's
No,
it.
actually, it's the
Done.
opposite. Yeah, we would not be amalgamating.
My point is, regardless of
Yeah.
what the provincial
Yeah, I get
government
it.
legislates,
I get it.
we don't get to say no, thank you. Doesn't matter what we want. Province has the whip hand constitutionally, legally, structurally, that's the way it sets up. Just for a clarification purposes.
Yeah.
Councillor McIntosh.
You had brought up the 15-minute city theory 2 weeks ago. I said, what the hell are you talking about? But another politician, not from this area, shared that with me, and he showed me the video from Edmonton, which you might have seen too, where apparently that became an issue. It's right off the wall, I think. When we talk about biking and walking, 15 minutes, I don't know many senior citizens in this community who are going to bike and walk in January to a doctor's appointment.
There you go.
Or to go get their groceries and carry 4 bags home. It's a great, it sounds great, 5 years ago, we got a discussion about why people weren't taking our buses. So I asked everybody in this room to put their hand up who came by a bus. Not one person put their hand up, including everybody on the council table, but they wanted everybody else to take a bus. I'm a proponent of active transportation. I've got a bicycle. I use it. I even took a bus to council meeting one time in January, and I live in Riverdale. I didn't realize the bus stopped at the Benson Center. It was the coldest night of the year, so I hoofed it home the rest of the way and never took another bus to the city council meeting. So anyway, I think the 15-minute city, there are 2 ways to look at it. The one way Sarah looked at it, and then there's the conspiracy theory that the government's going to force this on us. I can't picture Doug Ford coming up with a 15-minute city. It just isn't going to happen, or any other.
I'll take your word for it.
No, trust me. Anyhow, I've seen the video. This politician shared it with me as it was the truth, and I have real doubts about the, what's going on the internet with it. But at the same time, it's great to promote biking and walking, but not everybody can do that. If you can do it, it's great. If you can bring your groceries home on your bicycle, good. I can't. But I think, don't take me wrong on this, but I think you're overreacting to the 15-minute city thing.
I hope I am.
Councillor Gardner.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make my answer very quick. Accessibility to services to my residents, yes. 15-minute city, no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McDonald.
But we do need a grocery store downtown.
What did she say? What did she say?
We need a grocery store downtown.
Councillor Hebert.
And to that point, the opposite of a 15-minute city is a food desert, which we are seeing in our downtown, because maybe not everybody can bike or walk to a grocery store, but not everybody can get in their car and drive to a grocery store. Some have to walk, some have to take transit, some have to take their bicycles, and we need to make sure that those individuals can access the necessary services they need to survive, because there are many seniors who are living in the area who don't have access to transportation and are unfortunately, going the closest thing we have to a grocery store in the downtown is the dollar store or a corner store, where they're paying significantly more and they're not finding the produce that are keeping them healthy, and our community's health is declining, so we should be encouraging active transportation beyond that. Let's not talk about 15-minute cities. Let's just talk about accessibility to services for our vulnerable population. It's what I deal with day in, day out. People don't have access to the services that they need. So maybe we need to change the way we operate transit, the way we have our bicycle path, so that those individuals can get to the medical appointments, can get to the grocery store, can get to a pharmacy, so that they can live in dignity. And if it takes them 15 minutes to get there, bonus. So anyways, that's my take.
Further comments? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Burke.
That is it for the registered speakers, Mr. Mayor.
I'd invite anyone who wants to speak who's not registered to come forward. Ask you to please state your name before starting.
Hi, thank you. My name is Leah Carrier. I would just like to bring to attention, so I know, and I think Sarah mentioned as well, that most often when dealing with permits, the business owner is not dealing directly with the city, and there's kind of that brick wall of communication. And I think the mayor as well had spoken on, you know, how unfortunate it is for the business owners that are put into these situations. What is council or the city doing to support the business owner? Because there is that brick wall of communication between the city and the business owner. Has anything been talked about to support the business owner themselves that are struggling financially? They've lost, you know, everything that they're putting out into the city. They've lost their income. So what are we doing to rectify with the business owner? Never mind the permit for the building or whatnot, but to support that person.
Council? Councilor McIntosh?
Any ideas? By the way, our family's in business for 35 years, and so I got an idea what it's like to run a small business. It's not easy with all the government regulations and everything coming at you and employees and whatnot. But any ideas?
Yeah, no, for sure. There are a lot of business owners currently that are dealing, you know, with the loss of income or, you know, loss of everything that they put into the city. There just hasn't seemed to be any groups or communication from councillors specifically that, you know, like Kelly said, that empathize with the business owner. So I think maybe, like Kelly mentioned, communication, not, again, because there is the privacy issue with the permits or whatever that it may be keeping their business closed, but communication with the business owner to empathize, you know, that the city does understand that they're going through it.
I'm just wondering whether the Chamber of Commerce has a role to play in this when it comes to small business. Are you familiar with this chamber?
I am, yeah, but there doesn't seem to be anything, like I said, that empathizes with specifically the business owners that are struggling to open their doors. But no, that's an option for sure. But I'm just curious how council can kind of aid in that process.
I don't have the answer for you right now.
Councilor Hollingsworth.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. Like, are you suggesting the city should subsidize businesses when they're not doing well? Is that what you're
No,
looking
I don't,
for?
like, again,
Like you say, we've lost
empathizing-
money, so you want us to give businesses money to keep them
No,
afloat?
that's, I think you just misunderstood. When I mean
Obviously.
empathize, I don't mean financially. I mean support to possibly regain what they've lost in their business, not financially, but to support them moving forward and hopefully resolve the situation in a positive way.
Well, give me an example of support. Like, what kind of support would you like us to do? So for example, let me tell you because I don't know. I'm not a business owner.
So I think, like Kelly was saying also, communication. When there's a lack of communication on the matter, that business owner does become hopeless. They don't see an end or a resolution in any situation, whether that be permits or any other issue that is causing them to keep their doors closed. So when that communication ends, that any business owner, I'm sure, would feel hopeless in that situation. That's what's feeding their family.
So do you want us to respond to inquiries quicker? Is that what you're looking for?
I think, like Kelly said, timelines is something very important, as well as, like I said, support. Often when, like I said, the brick wall that comes up and there is that lack of communication, where should business owners turn?
So, please forgive me, but I'm trying to understand. When I hear the word support, okay, so you're not talking about financial support. You've expressed communication. Okay, so you want us to get back to you quicker? Am I clear on that?
If that's your take on that, for sure, because
Well, no, I want to know what you
communication
want.
So it's not, it can be different in many situations. When there's no voices coming from council or the city or whatever it may be directly to business owners, I'm just curious what your opinions are on what is the next step, what is the next move for business owners that, first of all, are forced to close their doors, for whatever reason it may be, or where do they turn?
I must confess, I'm not, perhaps we should have a conversation on where I can maybe really drill down rather than take council's time, because I'm clearly not getting,
Yeah,
not
that's no
understanding.
problem.
Okay, so perhaps after the meeting, maybe.
Counselor Good, then Counselor Gardner.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for bringing this forward, Leah. Obviously, we know each other. I've shopped at your family store for many a years. I wish I had a good answer for you, and I really don't think, there is one, unfortunately. We all, I'll say this, want businesses to be successful in our community. It is what allows us to become prosperous. What's very challenging is when we're dealing with a landlord and the landlord isn't doing their part. We can't really tell you what's going on. As my colleague spoke to earlier, there's a level of confidentiality that we can't just tell you what's going on with somebody else's case, even though you are their tenant. In terms of what can be done once you're in that situation where you've engaged with a landlord and the permits are not being approved and you cannot operate or open your business, I don't know if that's something that can go through the landlord-tenant board to seek remuneration for lost revenue and rent paid. Because if you're paying rent to a landlord but you're not able to occupy your space, I mean, that's a huge issue. I think we want to be empathetic. There's so little, like, as council that we could do. We can't just be like, oh, hey, Chief Building Official, can you please just go ahead and approve this permit? And he'd be like, well, I can't because of X, Y, and Z, the following reasons that are all very clearly written within the building code. Until this is done, it can't move forward. So it's very challenging for us. I think where we can probably improve is in the front end. And that's where I think, hearing from our economic development officer about kind of how they're supporting businesses in guiding them through that process at the front end, hopefully is going to avoid having businesses be in that situation. But I wish I had a better answer to give you other than we are empathetic. And I wish there was more that we could do to exercise and help and support you. But when it comes to, like my colleague was saying, financial support isn't really on the table. Maybe it could be, but I don't think it is at this point, and I think it could become a slippery slope in terms of who to help and when. We want you to be successful. We want you to do well. And I don't know if we can I don't think we should, but you can't create a blacklist of landlords where these are problematic landlords who have had repeated issues where their tenants are not able to occupy the space because they're not meeting their permits. And the building you're in is not the only one, and it's not the only landlord, and there are others. But it seems like the issue is coming from the landlord not being cooperative with bylaw in order to actually get things approved. So our hands are kind of tied.
No, for sure. And I'd like to clarify again, you mentioned financially, I wasn't speaking as of it in a financial way. I know that you've been in many times and you do make yourself seen downtown, and I think that's really important. And I know the mayor as well has spoken on CTV, and I think that was important as well to recognize. But I think, like you mentioned, also just being a part of council and being maybe more seen within businesses, that would maybe help for sure.
I think that's a doable thing. Thank you.
Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everyone said pretty well what I wanted to say, but at the end of the day, I've had some phone calls from people who needed permits, and I've gone down to the permit department. And I've asked them, what's holding this project back? Invariably, what it's going to be either provincial mandate or building code. Earlier on today, somebody said that the image was not good. I can tell you when I go back to those people and tell them, you don't meet the building code or you don't meet the provincial mandate, my image goes out the door, okay? But it's not my fault. And like Mr. Claude McIntosh said, I've not had any problems with the permit department. Except that when I have to go back to the person saying, no, you can't do it, and here's why. It's tarnishing their image too, because they can't do anything about it either. They've got to live by the provincial mandates. And I feel bad for people who are upset because of that, but at the end of the day, I really support our administration, and I have I'm sorry that you have those kind of problems.
No, thank you.
I wish it wasn't that way.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say as well, so like you were saying, that it does go back to provincial. And I think maybe more transparency on codes and where those codes can be found. I did myself go in to that department and ask for a printout or where those codes are accessed online, and I couldn't be given that information. So I think maybe more clarification on where business owners, homeowners could possibly find those resources themselves instead of having to go directly to the department may provide those people with more clarity. It may stop the problem before it starts.
Councillor Ngunjo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your point of view and your question. But I have a question for you, please. Tell me, do you have any example of what you are asking in another community that is working well for the businesses?
Do you mean in terms of what council can do specifically, or?
I mean, the kind of response that you want, that you are expecting from us. Do you have any community or any town or any city that is doing what you are expecting very good from us? Then we're going to copy from that.
For sure. I know I've spoken to several individuals, and it was brought up that Brockville is specifically is a little bit more clear on where codes and things, information about permits can be found in, it's more highlighted in big, it's more clear for these people who are searching for this information. It's black and white. It's not gray. It's practically handed over to the people that are questioning, where can I get this information? It shouldn't be, the answer shouldn't be, I don't know. When I go to the permit department and ask, where can I find a list of codes, or where can I find, information regarding my situation? It shouldn't be, I'm not sure. Because when you're going somewhere seeking information to the people that should know that information and you don't get it, it's very frustrating. So if those codes are clearly stated, it should be no problem to hand those over.
Thank you very much for your answer. You said Brockville.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So now we know from where to start. Let's say, for example, we open an office to support businesses. Is it something that can help to show some, how you say formation? Some trading. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. If we have a program where we can provide training to the business people who want to start with all information, is it something that can help you?
I think that would be more specific towards business owners. I think a lot of business owners, with regards to permits, would go just to the general permit department. That may be too general for business owners trying to open a business. So that, I think, would be a good idea.
That is a good idea.
Something more specific to those running a business, because permits for commercial spaces are a lot different than, permits for putting up a fence or permits for putting up a shed. That department's very general. So maybe something specific to business owners would be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
thank you.
did you, do you have a small idea of solution on what we're talking about? Meaning training or something like that can be
I think,
a
yeah, like
good
you, like you
starting
said,
point.
a starting point, exactly. So somewhere that's more specific to business owners, you know, that do have a face in the city would be probably helpful to those that are looking for answers.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Further comments? Councillor McIntosh, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, being we're back to the chicken egg thing where you're talking as a business owner and we're talking about permits with the landlord, the person who owns the building. Do we not have a business, I'm not sure what to call it, the civic center, part of the economic development department?
The Business Enterprise Center?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have you dealt with the Business Enterprise Center? Would they, through you, Mr. Mayor, would they be what she's talking about?
I don't think it's
To help
quite
businesses get-
that it. I think they help businesses get started.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, that's, do you have a business in Pitt?
We do, yeah.
Okay, and what businesses? I'll give you a plug, you can get a plug-in now.
Sorry?
You can get a plug-in. What's the name of the business?
Ecotrends Consignment.
Oh, yes, okay, great. You've been in business for a while then.
Yeah, so it'll be about 20 years.
Oh, my God, yes. Okay, well, you're on your way. They say 3 years and you're
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Or as a business professor once told me, when you're starting out in business, let your phone ring 5 times before you answer it. Might be the banker.
Further comments? Councillor Gardner, Mike, please.
Mr. Mayor, I got the feeling early on when Kelly and Nick Sievers were speaking that are the people at the counters rude or are they polite? I got the feeling that sometimes they were rude. And given the fact that sometimes when you don't get what you want, you're the one that starts to be rude. So, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking in general. I got that feeling, and so I wonder if you get that feeling or are you well taken care of in terms of speaking to people? You're not getting the answers you want, but...
I do understand that some answers aren't necessarily going to be given this evening. And I do believe that there were, and I can't remember off the top of my head, I apologize, there were a couple of comments that I believe that could have been taken out of context. I believe for the most part that everyone on council does want to see improvement. But I think we as the public would just like to see that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Final comments? Ms. Carrier, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council. I know time frame is here.
I just asked you to start with your name, please, sir, for the
Sorry,
record.
thank you. Stephen Parisian, and I'm a landowner in the city of Cornwall.
You can sit
And,
down if you like, sir.
I prefer to stand.
Okay,
Thank
fair
you so kindly. That being said, here in 2021, I went to the planning department to address that I wanted to sell property on Power Dam. And my property on Power Dam has lots of trees. So all the other stuff that was ripped out, the forestry behind, the wife and I are enjoying all the wildlife. That being said, so here I met with Carl from the planning department. This would have been probably around in January, February. And at that point in time, I had, Carl and I had came up with a plan to offset an outline of the property that I wanted to sell. So basically, it was a 150 wide by 207 deep. So that being said, here I thought, wow, we're in business. So here I hired a real estate agent, and we're going to list the property. And just before we're going to list the property, I went to see Carl for feedback, and there was a delay. So that was fine. March the 29th, I came down with COVID. I was hit hard with COVID. I was out of commission for right up until about near the end of June, and I work in the healthcare field. So here, as I was getting back into the healthcare field, about in November, December, I went back to the planning office, and Carl was no longer there. I then was met by Lindsay Parisian, and excuse me, and I'm going to refrain, I apologize to you. Listening to Claude and Alderman Claude and Dean making comments, in a good way, in regards to respect for names and so on. I'm not going to mention no names here, because everybody that I did come in contact with, the engineering department and the planning department, had treated me with the utmost respect. The problem that I ran into was that here, the property that I own, here, it took about 6 months, 8 months, and I'm saying that lightly. It was more over a year to actually come to light as of June of last year that the city wanted to take out 13 feet, 4 meters, okay, of frontage to widen Power Dam. So that being said, here, if you don't mind, if you could just pass that down, please. And here, that being said, I then proceeded to fill out an application for consent for having this property severed. In the process of doing that, I was then, whenever I presented the document to the planning department, I was told that, you know what, the engineering department is looking at something. So it started out, there was potential road widening. Then months later, it was maybe road widening. Then June the 9th of last year, it was official that they were going to widen the road. So that's fine. So my frontage is 180 feet long. The width is 4 meters, so 13 feet in. So whenever I approach the engineering department, I talked with one of the younger gentlemen, and we had a good conversation, but he pointed out to me, I said, so you're expropriating? And he says, well, no, Steve. Well, I says, yeah, but you're taking that land. My wife and I, we purchased that property. Shouldn't we be compensated for that property? And he said, well, no, that's not the way it works. So I said, okay, then. I says, that's fine. I says, but I got to go home and discuss this with my wife, and I want to stay married another 43 years. Okay, so, and I have a good lady, praise God. That being said, so to make the long and short of it, this is my dilemma that I have here today that I'm presenting to you, is that here, I received an email from from the engineering department, and they had pointed out to me that please bear with me. This comes later. The email that I received had pointed out further to our last discussion, further to your visit last week, we had an internal discussion, and the city retains its original position that widening the fronting of Power Dam Drive will be required as part of the consent application. The requirement for the widening will be listed as a condition on the consent application. This requirement is standard for any consent application where a severance is located beside a future road widening. The city's position remains that that the transfer of the widening, along with all the associated costs, includes reference plans be the responsibility of the property owner. This is where things got really confusing for me. So what I did, I decided to, whenever I'm in a situation, I always like to find resources. Like this one gentleman had mentioned, Mr. Field, whichever, you know, setting up a committee for plans, for permits, whichever. It's always food for thought. So what I did, I went to the oh my God. I had went to see the assessment office, and I talked with a gentleman in there, and he pointed out to me, he said, Steve, he said, this is simple, you know. Go back to the engineering department and just let them know, you know what, this one part, put a line there, you concur that cost, they concur the other costs of the taking this out, because now what I have to do, I went to the survey office, and they informed me that once this is agreed upon, then they can turn around and come in, and whichever I decide to divide, you know, they should help you out, accommodate you in some way, okay? But yet again, I was told that this parcel of land, it looks as though the city doesn't want to give me nothing for it. But you know what? I work in the healthcare field, and I have, like this gentleman was saying, I apologize. Your first name? Fred? Okay. Thank you so kindly. But you know what? His suggestion, I work in the healthcare field, and I like motivating people, okay? So I had this gentleman that I was taking care of, and I'm self-employed. So you know what? Every dollar to me is important. So I went to a newspaper, 1944 quote. This is phenomenal. And it shows in this, it shows this paper, phenomenal, that in 1944, December the 31st, Cornwall became a city. And I have here the engineering city plan for the city of Cornwall made public. This was the first draft, 1944, and I'm thinking, praise God, wow, unbelievable, Ed. But with this gentleman that I was taking care of, who was just a phenomenal person, and here, whenever we're going through this, he said, hey, Steve, there's widening proposals. Wow. I says, wow. So what does our forefathers say? And in this edition, I have city council here, too, which is really remarkable. But in this here thing, in this widening of proposal for the city, it says, I recommend that all original townships roads allowance within the enviro of Cornwall be widened to 80 feet, and that a definite policy adopt to the effect. In certain places, the widening can be accomplished by the operation of the Planning Development Act. In the majority of the cases, it will have to be accomplished by, people were mentioning communication in this room. Communication. They even added another word, negotiation. And if that is not possible, then I can understand where expropriating of the property comes into. But now here's the kicker. Here now, my application for this here points out that, you know what? It actually says, and the sad part about this is that I filled it out with a friend who is quite knowledgeable, who helped me out. And the top of the page, it has, from your planning department, it says, application for consent, committee, and adjustment. So now the bottom line is, if I go to the engineering department and I say, you know what, please pay me for this. My wife and I paid for this property, please. So you know what, give to Caesar, you know, whichever. Please, you know what, here it is here. Our forefathers is mentioning you negotiate this stuff. You don't just take something. And here, that being said, Well, my problem I ran into, so I went to the planning department today and I got new copies, okay? And I'm going to fill this out. Now, here's my problem. I fill this out and my wife and I, we sign it. I originally filled it out. My wife and I, our names are here. I presented it to the planning department. The planning department, I asked them to please review it with me to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And at the same time, I said to my wife, I says, honey, we're not going to sign this document because we don't want to be held, you know, that we're giving away property. And she said, yeah. So here I'm here with you tonight, and I'm asking for clarification. They're saying that in the email that I received from City Council, from the engineering department, they said to me that in their, please Lord. Yeah, so in here, so what I did, some of the people that I came across, good business people, who sent me some information on expropriating and the Expropriating Act, so I went over it. The Expropriating Act says that if you're being expropriated, the city has to give you in writing. And I requested from the engineering department and planning department in writing. Okay, so I didn't receive that. But at the same time, in the Expropriating Act, it states that the process that's to be followed, the city sends you documentation, it gives you a written letter that they're expropriating. And here now, it will list the reasons why they are, and naturally the widening of roads, okay? So that's fine. Then it has to be posted in the newspaper. 99.9% of the time, the land will be expropriated due to the fact that it is needed, okay? And the property owner has to understand that. That being said, but under the Expropriating Act, they will still compensate you. And in one of the meetings that I was in at the starting of this, the gentleman had questioned me in regards to what did I think this property would be worth, you know? And I was a landlord. I owned a few buildings. And anyway, here, that being said, here, I said to him, I says, it is an unfair question to ask me because I don't work in this area. You guys work in this area, you'd know better than I. But I said off the top of my head, you know what? Maybe 13 feet by 197 feet. I figure, you know what? I'm close to 3,000 square feet, whichever. I could build a home. So a previous property that had an east end, I had a duplex in the house on a half lot, 4 Bergen, 2 Bergen. I sold it during the time whenever the peak was high. Real estate was high. Well, you know what? I got top dollar. I've been losing money from day one since I started this. Now I'm at this crossroad, standing in front of you, asking you guys, if I sign this documentation, I'm agreeing to what this, and they're actually, the engineering department, the planning department, they're following the guidelines of the Expropriating Act. This requirement standards is for any consent application where a severance is located beside a future road widening. Please, I went ahead of myself. Back up. Further to the visit last week, we had an internal discussion, and the city retains its original position that the widening fronting Power Dam Drive will require as the part of the consent. The requirements for the widening will be listed. So who's listing that? Am I supposed to list in here why the city is widening it? Because obviously now to me, I understand that they're widening it because they have to widen Power Dam. But that all being said, here now I said to the real estate, I said to the gentleman from the engineering department, I says, you know what? The heck with it. So I'll put my whole lot up on the bill. I'll put everything up on the doggone market, my house and all. He says, but, he says, you can do that. But you still have, now that you know, you still have to inform the real estate agent what you're doing. So you know what? I'm before you, and I'm hoping and praying that I'm going to go home this evening and have something that I can say to my wife that, you know what, honey, yeah, you know what? Regardless of what's what, you're going to meet me, you're going to be fair with me. So if I turn around and put in this here proposal, okay, I want to turn around and cut off at this area here of land, okay, you know what? The city, they're going to either compensate me or they're going to turn around and help me out with the severance of the property so I can put this up on the market. And you know what? Whenever I left the assessment office last week, I was talking with them and I went back today. I turned around and I said, you know what? I said, the gentleman said to me, he said, Steve, he says, you'd be willing to be fair and, you know, compromise? And I said, sure, why not? I just want to get the thing up on the market, c'est la vie. So I'm here to ask you guys, what is city council, what are you going to do? And you know what? I heard a lot of talk this evening about bylaw officers, different departments. I worked for the city of Cornwall as a health worker. And you know what? Working short-handed, okay? Whenever this pandemic came along, I truly believe I have in my heart a solution for a lot of the areas that we're running into in the healthcare field. And the city's running a nursing home facility. So you know what? There's no reason for anybody to work shorthanded. You have an X amount of patients, the government should enforce that you have an X amount of workers. And coming to the defense of the engineering department and the planning department and all of these departments, regardless, you know what? I bet you any money, city council would save a lot more money and there'd be less legal legalities that you would be running into, you know? And this is where instead of us making, naming names and making bad comments or whatever, you know what? We should be all more productive. And you know what? Our forefathers here, Fred, he speaks, you know, it speaks so loud. You know what? There's fair game here, okay? Let's be fair with each other, you know, meet each other halfway, you know. So I thank you so much for please listening to me, and I'm hoping that, you know, Mr. Mayor, with the engineering department, we can, I can start this process and please just move on. And I thank you so much for allowing me to take this time. Next time, Your Honor, I'll make sure I'm registered, okay? I was unaware. Thank you so kindly.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's our first town hall. We're all learning something. Before I go to council, I think what I would like to do is potentially, we have a meeting about this next week to discuss, to see. But I can tell you that this hasn't come to council yet, so I don't know how familiar anyone else around the table is with this, but I'll open the floor to comments.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor McIntosh and Councillor Hollingsworth.
Yeah. Steve, that was like so much information. It was like drinking from a fire hose.
I'm sorry, yeah. And I perched dry. Thank you.
On a personal note, you're a PSW?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The name, you take care of my wife's parents. Okay. Okay, that was the wise man you were talking about, eh? My father-in-law. Your prayers aren't going to be answered tonight. We're going to have to save that for a PAC meeting, I think. And anyway, we heard you and appreciate the nice comments you had to make about our engineering department.
Yeah, well, you know, but
I think we'll see what happens.
I really want to emphasize on that too. They were all very respectful with me, and I'm not saying that just to throw accolades their way, but I have to say, you know, whenever they did address me, we did the best that we could do together, you know.
Yeah. Okay. And just where do you live on Power Dam?
I'm the second house from the end of Power Dam and Tollgate. So where Braze Construction has took out all the bush,
yeah.
I have about somewhere around close to 300 evergreens all around that property.
Okay.
It's beautiful. you
Yeah,
know.
nice location.
Yeah, really nice.
Feed the deer?
Oh, God, yeah, we feed deer, everything. We have everything, seriously.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. An awful lot going on there.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not, I don't know what my colleagues feel, but there's no chance I'm going to make a comment on everything you presented without talking to our administration, so I completely understand the whole problem.
And
got
I
it.
also have to make you aware too, that I am aware also that there has been a change in different portfolios, say, of some of your staff.
Well,
So that
just-
I'm aware of, but still, the long and short of it, at the end of the day, you know what? A lot of time has gone by.
Fair enough.
You know.
I realize that for
Yeah.
you, but this is like the first time I've ever really
Yeah.
heard of the
Yeah, no,
subtlety.
that's
So,
fine.
give me some time, we'll potentially
Please
wade
and thank
through
you.
it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Madam Clerk?
I have nothing else on the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Before I adjourn, I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This is our first town hall. I'd like to think it went relatively well, but the big takeaway from this is that we have some action items to come back on here, right? We're not just here to hear feedback and sit on it or not do anything. Obviously, we need to act on the items that we heard on tonight. So that's, our administration is here tonight with us. I'm hopeful they took some notes because we'll be following up. I know everyone around the table here will be following up on these items. Stay with us, and we'll be doing this again in the near future. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Gunjo, all in favor? Can I see that again? All in favor, please? Thank you. Carried. We are adjourned. Good night.